All right, welcome back to another episode of Buy or Sell. What the hell? Yeah, we're back, back to back, 2 days in a row. I figured, why not? Right, the market jumped down 6%. Look at 6 or 7% overnight. A lot of stories being told. I mean, what do you guys see in the markets today? We have Jason and Chris on today.
Oh, howdy. Well, crypto kind of followed suit late in the day. I just thought it was more of I just think it's all these bots have the same kind of very amateur technical strategies. I don't think there's that many sophisticated algos that are really trading. So once a pennant breaks, so you could kind of see it last night, it's the most obvious technical pattern, and then all the bots just fire off, and there's no liquidity, and it just slams the market. I mean, these machines were probably selling Bitcoin down for like 300 handles, and it doesn't make sense to sell that low when you already moved. I mean, what was the percentage moved down yesterday late? It was at like 9 o'clock, I think. And so, well, the backdrop. So the overall markets had the first down day since the Brexit. As far as I mean, it wasn't even that bad. I mean, China was down 5% last night. Can you imagine the U.S. market down 5%? I mean, people would be freaking out. They were yesterday. But we've been talking about it. Growth is probably going to slow in the back half of the year. So we're in the fourth quarter. We had accelerating numbers and data for 8 quarters, which was a record, probably going back since the 90s. And so when you set that high bar, it the comparable periods is you set yourself up for a miss. So if the data comes in weaker in the fourth quarter, we've already seen inflation doing the same thing. So you get inflation rollover, growth rolling over. The data is probably going to keep surprising to the downside, and the market was kind of front running that. We've seen the dollar be strong for most of this year. Treasuries couldn't rally with the S&P down 100 handles yesterday, but then finally, once Asia opened up, long bonds finally trade better. Stocks got crushed. The VIX was down at 13 when we were talking about being long volatility. We're up at 20, 21 now. So a lot of risk off. I think that's going to continue into the back half of this year. And it was like, I mean, the S&P was down 100 handles yesterday, and Bitcoin like it was oblivious, didn't even care. And then
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, around 9 o'clock, there's a little trend break, and it's like all the computers go nuts.
Yeah, yeah. I
I
mean,
mean, what are you guys thinking?
yeah, I shared a graph on Twitter. It was showing like the overall volume on all these different exchanges of Bitcoin, and I think you just have to expect these sort of jumps with just a complete lack of liquidity to an
Yeah.
extreme amount. I mean, I don't people don't understand how really small and illiquid this market is. Shakeouts are just going to continue to happen until there's some sort of volume increase. I mean, it's just there aren't as many buyers or sellers. So when a big buyer or a big seller or a large amount of these bots decide to sell, there's just not enough demand to satisfy that supply at that price level. So you're gonna just see a drop to a level where the buyers are, and we're seeing a drop and hold at six. Six seems to be where the buyers are.
That's been the floor. I mean,
Yeah.
to me, it's just I I think there's probably a few good high frequency shops that have experience with the computers and the models and their algos, but I think for the most part, I mean, it's that trend line was such an obvious line right there at 6,400. As soon as that broke, I just don't. I just think these machines are a little bit sloppy. In addition to the liquidity, because I mean, they just sold it straight down. It's like every single machine is hitting the same thing. It's hitting the bid, same thing. 6,400, 6,380, 6,350, 62 handle, 61, and didn't stop till below 6,100. It was basically 400 points of instant selling. So I, I mean, it's a little bit annoying, but at the same time, I mean, it's a new market, so this is kind of to be expected. Um, I don't know if they're hitting the exchanges or if this is futures based too, or a little bit of both. I just don't think there's that many futures shops playing. I mean, all the action was in the other markets yesterday. Between the volatility, what S&Ps were doing. I mean, it was a really big day. and nobody did anything in Bitcoin futures, and then all of a sudden at 9:30, have the big move.
Yeah, exactly. And people like to tell these stories about, the correlation here, because you see the Dow drop, that such a large amount since with 2016 with Brexit, like you said earlier. But that correlation doesn't equal causation. It could just be coincidence. People are looking for a story that fits whatever mold or whatever the market event is. When there probably isn't one, right? It's just the bots. They hit that level, and there's just not enough demand, to
Yeah,
equal it. So, I mean, crypto is, of course, riskier than stocks, so it'll crash harder and faster if if there's a correlation there. But that doesn't really mean that there is. I think really what we're seeing now at the 6,000 level are these groups or these high frequency traders, these bots. They're kind of just testing where the market is, where these buyers are, and where the bottom is, right? And I think the weak volume just kind of allows them to do it so simply and cheaply. I mean, really, when you look at how much is actually trading, it really isn't a surprise that any decent sized accounts could be tossing the rest of the market around like this. They can easily lead this market and cause others to act accordingly or emotionally.
yeah,
I think it's kind of indicative where you're looking at this trend. I think we're kind of in that last stage of this cycle where, we're about to find out where the bottom is here.
yeah.
But then again, I mean, it's easy to come up with all sorts of stories.
Yeah, I mean, in the volume, and we've just been trading this week and last week was we talked about it as just absolutely zero movement. We've pancaked this. We've come to this apex and this wedge that's been going on for 9, 10 months, and so we only dropped 5%. I think when we have more involvement in the market on the way up, you're going to see the same type of action from the automated high frequency stuff, and these moves are going to be a lot bigger than 5%. Because you only had 5% between where nobody wanted to trade and then this floor that you mentioned, Alex, like 6,000, 5,800. Chris, what are you thinking?
No, I'm kind of in the same boat, that it just seems very manipulated and not legitimate volume in the sense of like actual market movement. So I think it'll be interesting to see if we see follow through on this move down.
And we
So
haven't today. I mean, it's just been
yeah,
sideways all
yeah,
day. We haven't even moved. I mean, if boom, move happened in 20 minutes last night, and we haven't gone anywhere all day. You know?
yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, okay, so how many times are we going to hit this 5,800 to 6,100 range that it just bounces off that every single time? It's not coming up as far off of each bounce, and so
Yeah,
that's a little bit concerning. Like, okay, well, you're going to get to a point where you can't be making these moves back down, and it's going to have to either break through that floor, or it's going to have to go back up.
yeah.
So
I
it'll
mean,
be interesting to see.
and we may have created a new pivot also because when you look at the weekly, the 7,400, 7402 to be exactly, but that was the lower high weekly, what we call reversal of pivot. So that was the lower high that would change things.
Mhm.
And now we might have just put in another lower high relative to that. So 6,800 might actually be the new pivot. That trend line's coming right into where all those highs were last week also. So that might be a positive note that now if we do bounce, like you were just saying, Chris, that these bounces have been shallow, but now maybe we get above 6,800 and things change technically. We can start making some higher highs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and when we were seeing that, you said that 9 o'clock yesterday, when when the price action, the volume really started kicking in, there was a huge spike in volume in South Korean, Japan. I think BitHub and Bitflyer. I mean, the volume spikes were huge on that. Kind of interesting. I don't know why, but just
Really?
yeah, I don't know why that metric kind of spiked, but
Well, I guess that's probably the only market that was really paying attention. When we were talking about the other markets, like what the S&Ps were doing on the Asia Open, then all of a sudden it was like nobody was really paying attention to BTC. But I'm looking at the futures. They traded Yesterday, maybe 5,000 contracts on, this is XBT, so this is on the board. Um, and inside that 30 minutes, probably traded half of the day's volume, a little bit more. Yeah, we probably traded 32 contracts inside of like 30 minutes. So that was 3/4 of the entire volume for yesterday was inside of that 15, 20 minutes. And I don't know, it still wasn't very large for the futures basis. I mean, the average has been just kind of hard to pull up. The average has been 2,000 contracts. But a couple months ago when we were trading up at 8,000, 8,500, we made that lower high at 7,400, and we were having six, seven, eight, $10,000 days as far as total contracts traded. So even with that spike yesterday, it was pretty
You know,
dismal.
and I think we shouldn't. I think we should at least try to point people in the right direction. Here is that you shouldn't really be trying to time this bottom, right? I don't know about you, but I don't think any smaller players here should be really trying to time this market bottom. I think you just have to
Yeah,
plan accordingly with risk management. As fun as all these different stories and storytelling is, is it manipulation, bots, news items? It really doesn't matter because there's too many variables to sort of time the exact bottom of this market, and you're just going to get bounced around with this low volume. I mean,
yeah,
unless you're a big, very, very, very big buyer or seller, there's no way you're going to do it
yeah,
without just getting lucky.
yeah. I mean, it's really tough to try to be in there, not getting whipped around for 2 to 5% when this bull market does start. I mean, we're gonna have 50% moves and 25% moves on the week. So to kind of care about a 5% drop is a little bit staring at the tree instead of looking at the forest.
CNBC did just tweet that Bitcoin's suffering a sell-off and it's crashing. So I think
Today?
is the bottom in then? I don't.
Oh
the
my
the
goodness!
one true counter indicator, right?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
I mean, it doesn't even trade it all day.
I don't know.
Anyway, well, I didn't have much else to guys add on that. I mean, I we really thought we would see some volatility in markets in October, and it's exactly what we got, and then BTC just is not moving. So I was kind of hoping that would shake things up.
Yeah, Bitcoin's not moving, but you should move your Bitcoin off Bitfinex. It seems like, huh? Bitfinex, the whole tether. I mean, they actually stopped withdrawals of deposits to USD, right? I mean
Well,
that can't be a good, you know, that can't be good for them. Can't
Chris,
be a
you're
good look.
bringing up BitMEX too.
Yeah, jeez. I think that's kind of the biggest issue right now. Bitcoin drops a few percent, but one of the biggest exchanges, volume-wise, is having regulation issues. I mean, I don't understand how that's. I mean, that should easily be the biggest news of the day.
Yeah.
It's terrible timing, I think, but I mean, let's just get that over with, and whatever has to happen with that exchange has to happen.
Hmm.
But I mean, if you guys have any last thoughts here, I think we're gonna wrap it up. Nice short, about 15-minute episode here.
Yeah, I think
Yep.
as far as crypto goes, I don't think you need to be worried about the risk on the downside unless you get a daily, weekly close below 5,800. So your risk reward is still, you have a ton of reward on the upside. Your risk is pretty small here. We're trading 6,200, so you only have 400 points, and the upside is probably 4,000 points.
Yeah.
um, just over the next 6, 12 months. So 5,800 on the downside, I think a lot of people are trading other markets too. So we still like long dollar. I made some sales at 116 here today. I think that's a good spot. The bottom of the range was like 113, the intermediate term risk range. S&Ps are flirting. All of the U.S. equities are flirting with their 200 a day here. Every trader is going to have that on their chart. But to us, I'm thinking 2,700 on S&Ps is where our pie line is. You could certainly trade down to the January lows, which is still another 250 points lower. So there's a lot of risk if you're, we've been saying we wanted to be out of stocks and the high growth, high beta stuff and be much more defensive. We're a better seller of stocks now. So any rally, we're going to be shorting S&Ps. Still like buying long bonds on dips, and we like buying volatility. That's kind of been the call for the last couple of months. So
Yeah, yeah, and if you like the way we think about markets, just come in the chat room, right? I mean, go to blockedgecapital.com, education on the top, and it's a free chat room. It's pretty much Slack that we just all about 1,000 traders just talk all markets, including crypto.
yep, so come
Well,
join us. Finish out the week in there.
yep. All right. Until next time, guys.
Good boys.
See ya.